So get your questions ready. Begin tweeting your questions at HWWP Meetup. And we will start queuing up the questions now as I am bringing up our panelists for this evening. Our moderator is Roy Sivan. He is one half of the arcCTRL, arcCTRL.com, arcCTRL team. It's a very excellent team. Many wonderful people reside on that team. Also, he works at Disney as a developer. So if you want to come over here, Roy, and we'll put you there. All right. Andrew Bela of Bela Design. He also runs the WooCommerce Los Angeles Meetup Group. So, and Topanga Meetup Group. Sorry about that. Yes. So feel free to join us over here. David Hensel with Max CDN. David Hensel just spoke here like last month. So we're inviting him back to speak on hosting, e-commerce. You used to own an e-commerce company. Yes. Okay, so we'll let you talk about that yourself. Aaron with Zero Lag. He is a specialist in helping people with their WordPress websites getting hosted. So if you guys need hosting for some WordPress websites you've got going on, check with Aaron after this tonight. Zero Lag's really cool. We're using it for a few sites ourselves. And Joel Bronkowski, who we just heard, from WooCommerce itself. So, once again, be queuing up your questions and tweeting them to @HWWP Meetup. And we will get ready to answer those questions right now. I'm going to turn it over to Roy.
Where are you going to be? Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be around here.
All right, just
I'll be nearby.
let me know when those are questions.
Okay.
I'm actually going to start with one of my own questions because I asked some people past couple days if they had questions. So I got a nice little list here. Hopefully I can challenge some of you guys. I'm going to start out with a pretty basic question. It's hosting related. It's a hosting question that I got. And the question is, what is the difference between shared and managed WordPress hosting? And why is one so much more expensive?
So I'm guessing that the distinction between shared and managed would be more of a shared versus a VPS or some kind of a... because there's also managed shared hosting as well. So.
I think it's more like HostGator versus WP Engine.
Okay. So in a classical shared model, you're sort of on your own. It's self-provisioned. You do everything on your own. If you don't know how to do it, you need support, ask someone you know. In a managed environment, you have a team behind the service that you can reach out to for sysadmin support and guidance as well. Typically the real distinction is in one scenario you have no help, in the other scenario you have help.
Anyone else have any answers to that? Or
I think, yeah, I think I know WP Engine also has some great kind of services that come bundled with their hosting packages, like backups and automatic updates and things like that. So I don't know if you guys want that.
And CDN.
And CDN, yeah, sorry.
I think the biggest thing is if you make money with your website, you don't want to have it on a shared environment, because if something goes wrong, you want it fixed as soon as possible. If this is your moneymaker. And expensive is really relative. You know, if you make your living on your website and HostGator is like $6 or something like this a month, I would not trust my business with this.
all right, we got a question from Twitter?
Yes, we do. Is hosting enhanced for WooCommerce? Is hosting enhanced for WooCommerce?
So just to repeat it, is hosting enhanced for WooCommerce?
I can answer that. I need several months. It's all good. I like that. So I guess the answer is it depends on where you go. But in some hosting environments, whether it's at Zero Lag or other places, when you're doing hosting for e-commerce, the first thing that you think about is that conversions increase with performance, right? So if your business or your website is a business system designed to generate revenue, to turn users into dollars, then your conversion rate is absolutely the most important thing. And so when you're in an optimized environment where you have tools for caching, thinking about the e-commerce experience, there's UX, right? There's the visible, tangible front end that users interact with. But there's another component, which is really the experience of the passage of time. And so there's a lot of research out there that talks about how conversion rates drop precipitously as pages load more slowly. And so finding a hosting service that provides performance optimization specifically around e-commerce and WooCommerce is really important. Because when you bring those caching components in, when you bring the intelligence of site optimization and server optimization into the picture, you increase performance, you increase conversions, and at the end of the day, as a merchant, you make more money.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this talk pretty long. This is what we do, we make websites a lot faster. And the funny thing is I used to own an e-commerce business in Germany, which I sold 8 years ago or something like this. And then I moved here and started the CDN. Back then when I had my e-commerce business, I didn't even know that page load time makes a difference in terms of conversion. And there's pretty crazy studies out there that show the numbers. Amazon released something, they said if their site is 100 milliseconds slower, they lose 1% revenue, which is kind of crazy. Or another case study from Mozilla where you download the Mozilla browser. They did conversion optimization, changing colors, moving text around, doing whatever. And they were able to increase it by 2%, and then they made the site load 3 seconds faster, and the conversion rate increased by 15.4%, which is kind of mind-boggling. If you see this in the context of Mozilla, how many more browsers are being downloaded just because of making it load faster, and it has a very big impact.
One more metric around that, just to add to that, is that with every second of page load speed, every loss of 1 second, your conversion rate can reduce by up to 7% for every second of additional page load time.
I got one. I don't know if this is more hosting or more WooCommerce, but a question I get a lot also is PCI compliance. Do I need to deal with PCI compliance if I have a WooCommerce site? Does it handle it for me? What's the deal with that?
Sure. So PCI compliance it's going to depend on the plugin you're using and the gateways, and there's a lot of newer technologies. I work with clients that don't have HTTPS secure SSL attached to their site. There's DPM by Authorize.net. I don't know if you've heard of that, where you don't need an SSL. So I think there's a general understanding in the population that maybe the site's not secure if it doesn't have SSL, but there are other methods through tokenization that you can keep the security enhanced and intact. So I think that's one thing I found with companies. Somebody might come to the site and think it's not secure when it is. So I think from a perception of having a site, if you have a larger site, it probably makes sense to just have the SSL because it'll be less questioning. Some browsers will, such as Safari, will actually give an error message if it's not having the SSL, even though it's a secure transaction. So I've seen that happen.
Yeah, depending on how you're going to take payments, this becomes much more important. If you're going to take payments on site, you definitely have to be PCI compliant and work with your host, or to ensure that it's SSL certificates, right, secure. There's a pretty cool service called Majira that used to be part of WooCommerce Core, but we still work pretty closely with them. That kind of takes the headache for a lot of small businesses, users getting started that want to take payments on site. They can utilize Majira and choose from their payment gateway and not have to really deal with that. It makes the whole checkout process, PCI compliant. So I don't know if you guys, if you follow the Woo blog, you would have seen that WooThemes.com was actually hacked last year. We were taking payments on site, And we were PCI compliant and had our SSL certificates, but the information was stolen in real time. We didn't store credit card details anywhere, but it was stolen in real time. And just for the sake of a quick, secure, like to fix it quickly, we switched to offsite payments with PayPal Express, just because it then pushes all the liability of payments to their servers and whatnot. So, but some people would argue that you'll lose out on your conversion rate will sink when you send people off-site, because you're sending, the site doesn't look like your site, the URL doesn't look like, it's not ideal, but it is the most secure way to tackle that. So, yeah.
I think a good point that you just alliterated is that even if you're PCI compliant, it doesn't mean that information can't be stolen. So it's really, really important as an e-commerce merchant to understand, or as a developer building e-commerce sites, to understand the implications here, and especially as a developer, to not take on that responsibility. It is so important. I've seen it so many times from the hosting side. We get a call and someone got hacked, and the reality is that the application itself, your hosting company can't protect you from vulnerable code. They can't protect you from code that allows SQL injections, things like that. So it's really important to understand that if you are, just because you've checked a bunch of boxes on a PCI sheet, it doesn't mean that you're secure, and to make sure, especially when you're working with clients and with merchants, to protect yourselves and help protect their businesses by recommending that they work with a security professional for PCI. That's what I would add to that.
All right, question from the audience. We have Twitter handle Veet Online. You here? All right. He asked, e-commerce is hard. Are there any suggested resources for new store owners?
Nobody wants that one.
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I'm a little biased, but WooThemes.com is pretty good now, especially with the Project Apollo thing. It kind of walks through payment, shipping, tax, like at least very basics, and then some suggestions for different services that we recommend. And then each of those services would also have materials that would help you. Like Avalara actually has really cool site that's pretty enlightening if you don't know much about like tax law in counties, cities. Like if you just look at their map, it's kind of like mind-boggling to think of trying to tackle that yourself. So there's a cool site that is called Independent Retailer. I think they also have a blog called Modern Retailer, and they're looking at actually retailers in general, whether it be brick and mortar or e-commerce, and then they put on these really neat small independent retailer conferences. So they're actually focused on retailers that have 1 to 12 employees. So they do a really good job. They put out a white paper that's really good called I think it's called Independent Retailer. So yeah, I'll try to tweet that out when this is over. I'd really recommend looking at them, and they put on different regional conferences to help retailers get started and tackle some of the hard issues that you'd be facing.
Does lynda.com have any WooCommerce stuff on it?
Yeah, lynda.com. So yeah, if you're talking about configuration, we actually just launched a educational partners section on WooThemes.com that had, so there's a lynda.com walkthrough. What's the other one? WP 101 has some cool stuff. There's one with, what's the name? Sidekick is actually Sidekick Pro is really cool. That actually offers WooCommerce. It's like a walkthrough, but through audio. So like when you hover over a section, they'll talk you through configuring your site, which is really neat. It's only set up for basic WooCommerce installation, but down the line you want to develop those for some of our more challenging extensions like table rate shipping and subscriptions and stuff like that. There's a few, if you go to Woo Educational Partners, you'll see, I think there's 6 or so different links to, I think there's a Udemy course as well that's really good.
I just wanted to clarify, are you talking about configuration of e-commerce or like, I think very general question?
Process, pretty much everything. I launched an e-commerce a while ago and no sales and like, getting, like advice on not only, I mean, the technical, but also the business side of it.
Okay. What are you selling?
I'm selling headbands, bows and like handmade bands for girls.
Okay. Girls accessories.
Girls, yeah.
I mean, it's always, if you figure out who's your real target customer, if you find a niche, it's always easier to sell something. As Seth Godin quote, everyone is not your customer. It's like if you really focus and narrow down on, just have a very narrow focus of your target audience. Do you have any focus or is it just general?
My target would be like moms, like between the 35 to 50 age range. They have girls and like, that's pretty much my target.
It really helps if you can narrow it, focus it down a little more. Of, I don't have any good examples for. Can you just be more specific? Moms that work out or whatever, and just like find places where they hang out and partner up with these places. Do some giveaways and forums or something like this. Just make sure that you get your name out there. Just hustle.
All right. Are there any good WooCommerce plugins or other plugins to help you with notifying customers about back orders? And there's a second part to the question is, do you process the sale even without the inventory?
Isn't there a plugin? Or no? I don't know. I mean, I can use the second part is if you turn off inventory control.
So if you in WooCommerce, I have I'm also a WooCommerce enthusiast. And I have my own WooCommerce site as well. So if you turn off inventory control for a product or a SKU, then the number of units in inventory will not impact the user's ability to check out with that product. So if inventory control is disabled, then you can have a basically limitless number of checkouts on that product.
Don't quote me on this, but it's been a long time since I've run my own store using WooCommerce. It's probably changed quite a bit, but I do know that there were sales that, you have the option to check whether you want to take sales on a backorder status. So you can decide that. If you don't, then it won't allow. It sounds like whoever asked this question would want to take sales on a backorder, and if that's the case, you can enable WooCommerce to do that. It would then notify the user that they made the purchase, but it's on backorder. I'm not sure about the second part of that question as to whether it would then. I'm sure there's a way to configure it. That's one of the beauties of WooCommerce. It's customizable, and there may even be an extension for this, but I don't think as a default you can set it up to then notify that customer once it's their stock again. So I could be wrong about that. Yeah.
But when you as a
When you, as a store owner, go into the order and change the status of the order, if you've gotten the product in, you decide that part of your process flow is that a backordered product stays in a specific status within the order, and you update the order status, and then you can have WooCommerce trigger an email based on the status change of the order to the user. So then you can customize that email, update the status, and an email will be triggered to the user. So that's a possible workaround.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, we have a question.
live question.
Live question. Are we allowing live questions?
Twitter or nothing.
As far as I know, once you take an order and you take the money, you sort of, you have to ship that product within 48 hours.
technically it's 24 hours.
Yeah. So,
Unless you have an agreement from the user for backup.
unless you have specific from the customer that, you can ship it like in 3 weeks or something.
So the question was like, if you take money, if you allow back orders and take the money right away, basically, right? And I would probably not do this. Just a thought back to how it was back then. If the customer orders multiple items and one of the items is not in stock, and and they may not be aware that this is not available for the user experience. From the user experience point of view, I would never do this because it really creates disappointment, etc. And I think it's just too confusing to the user. And one thing that really helps is word of mouth. The presentation that I had here before was about Net Promoter Score, how to measure how happy your customers are with you. And I think this will be a big negative, and you want repeat customers. You want to always ensure that your customers are super happy, and so I would never do this.
So one of the other things that you can do, there's 2 modes that your payment gateway can operate in. So it can operate in auth and capture, where it's going to authorize the funds in the cart and capture the funds immediately in one foul swoop. And that's the case in which you need to deliver the product or ship the product within 24 hours. But the other way that you can do it is auth only. And this should be a setting within your gateway settings in WooCommerce. So you should be able to change the gateway setting to auth only, in which case you can authorize the card for that amount. The amount is held on the card for 72 hours by the merchant bank. And if you cannot capture, because it's a second step of capturing, capture the funds within 72 hours, they're released. But at least you know that the card was good for that amount at least one time. So hopefully when you go back to ship the product, you can reauthorize and capture. They don't need to re-input their information. You can reauth and capture on an expired authorization. But it depends on who your gateway is and what your merchant bank allows. So it'll be dependent on that as well.
Gonna go to Twitter question, sorry, from Rolando. What WooCommerce membership options extensions do I have to implement a member-based store?
Ask Chris Lemon.
We just launched the membership plugin. Yeah. What kind of membership site? Content? It doesn't really matter. Membership, right?
There's so many out there. If somebody mentioned Chris Lemon is doing, I think, a 30-day blog on just memberships. One we've used successfully is called Groups, and it's simple. It creates protected areas or pages of your site, and you can make it as a subscription base. That's one we've been using.
That ties into WooCommerce?
It is, yeah. It's a WooCommerce plugin. It's a paid one. Works with groups and subscriptions. Groups is free, but then the subscriptions one is the one you pay for. So you run 2 of these side by side. I have a client who they sell different educational materials. So this is a way so that anyone who buys the DVD or the audio, they can go to their membership, their login, and they'll go to their account and they can see the video or download it. So they have extra support there once they make the purchase, and that's worked out well. So, but there's a lot. I'll pass it down if anybody else has others.
There's one by WooCommerce specifically?
Subscriptions.
Yeah.
There is a member web.
There's a WooCommerce membership extension was released, I think, in the last 3 weeks. So you guys can check that out. I, to be honest, haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but it was built by Skyverge, who makes incredible WooCommerce extensions and knows the product really well, and so have a look at that. Just
Cover the profile and everything.
Yeah, to be honest, embarrassing, but haven't used it yet. But it's supposed to be a pretty slick. It's an extension for sites that have any kind of membership user base that they want to sell products to. So, and I know that it plays well with our subscriptions extension, which is hugely popular. It's our #1 selling extension. So.
Just one thing to add to that. You might think also about if your site is mainly a membership site, maybe you don't need WooCommerce, maybe you want to go with a specific plugin that just does memberships, like MemberPress. But if you're thinking about, I always tell clients if they're thinking about selling anything in the future, you know, physical, virtual, download, anything, then what's nice about WooCommerce, it becomes one platform. So it's not like you have multiple platforms, there's one login and it can manage all the transactions.
All right, live question.
I just like to go a little bit back in time and just cover this. So I'm not a big purchaser or anything, but in Amazon I bought 2 products and one shipped and charged me right away quick, and the other one was 3 days back ordered and shipped 3 days later and charged me again. So I'm just not clear how WooCommerce would handle that. Can it do things like that, or do they have to wait till everything is, do one shipment? Can it handle multiple shipments and charges?
Yeah. I think, sorry, I didn't get your name. The gentleman in the back was referring more to the legalities around being a merchant. So I think you have to be very clear about having clear expectations for your customers. Like if an item is back ordered, you need to have that on display. Otherwise, there are legalities around how quickly you can fulfill that item.
But I mean, just technically.
Oh, and functionality? Yeah.
Yeah, just functionality. You can order 2 things. It says, well, this will ship in 3 days. We'll charge you twice 5 days from now. Can it do things like that?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it automated?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can configure your store to do that, yeah.
Cool.
Here's a good question from the audience. Are there any limitations for using WooCommerce for real-time transactions at live events? And I think that could also tie into hosting as well. Like, if you're at a live event, you're going to get a spike in traffic, so what should you do in that kind of scenario?
I did have somebody, I don't know about this, but like using like the little swipers, is there a solution for that? I'm curious myself.
Yeah, so
Like Square?
Sure.
Square has it.
yeah, I think a number of the payment services are coming out with point of sale swipers. So PayPal has their version of that. So the real question is though, if you're going to have a point of sale, how does all that information get stored in one place? And at the moment, we don't have some, at least on WooThemes.com. There may be stuff outside of that. I know there's a WooPOS, a guy that built WooPOS in Australia. But we are working on an integration with Square. So Square's by far and away the most popular way for people to handle like very simple point of sale. And ideally what we'd like to have is if someone's going to take Square point of sale and they're going to have the WooCommerce store, they can also accept Square via the e-commerce side of things too, or they can handle other payments, but that information needs to be able to be passed back and forth. So that would be the point of that integration. And then the other big one is, there's a couple other big point of sale services like Vend is quite big, and then Lightspeed.
Can you repeat that? The last name that you just said?
Vend, yeah, V-E-N-D, yeah. Vend and Lightspeed. There's a Lightspeed integration that we're also working on. So hopefully we'll get these out this quarter. But that'll hopefully at least enable people that have point of sale or brick and mortar stores to look at more seriously look at WooCommerce and tie those 2 things together.
On the hosting side, if you're planning on having spikes of traffic for any reason, whether it's a live event or a marketing piece, whether it's an email, social, whatever you're doing that is going to drive some kind of a burst of traffic, is to make sure that the resources you have, right, your site can handle that burst of traffic. Do you have enough horsepower, right, to keep the site performing well? So the number 1 tip that I would give, and I'll pass the mic just to the left here.
You can keep it talking.
Okay. So the biggest tip so ZeroLag partners with MaxCDN. We provide MaxCDN service as a value add to our clients. First taste is free. No, but as a value add to our clients, especially in the e-commerce space. Because one of the cool things about MaxCDN and other CDNs in general is that they're serving the static content of your site. CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, and it delivers your static content. Images, JavaScript, CSS, things like that. So, Because those assets are not coming off of your actual origin server, right? The server on which your website lives. You've uploaded the files, you've uploaded the images, all these things. They live on your server. Those requests from the users are being served from the CDN. So all of that traffic, right, 50 to 60% of your website is actually being served from the CDN, which allows you to absorb a much larger hit of traffic without having to increase your hosting resources.
Thank you. Actually, it's really important to have this integration of your point of sales and your e-commerce store. I didn't have this back then. This was always a giant headache to know how much should I have in stock. It's like really hard.
Yeah. Question for me, actually. Do you know if you're doing point of sale at a live event, and assumingly you're on a mobile device like a phone, do I have to, I just like, here's my phone, and you swipe the credit card on it? Is that how it would work? I mean,
The swipers plug into the phone plug.
Yeah, no, I get that, but how does that, so that swipe goes onto the site?
Yeah, I mean, I've only used Square Lightspeed at my shopping myself. Usually they have if it's a person, I presume they'd have their iPhone, the swiper. They take the card, swipe it, and then hand it to you to sign, and that's it.
So
or not hand it to you, maybe even just hold it for you.
The idea is that gateway is integrated to WooCommerce in your payment section.
Well, I'm more curious if you need to be building an app that runs WooCommerce as opposed to loading Safari and running WooCommerce.
You can do it through your browser.
Yeah, and in that case, you wouldn't be using your WooCommerce site with. You'd be using Square. Square would just talk back to your WooCommerce site. It wouldn't be your actual WooCommerce site. Yeah. And that's
And maybe do it on an iPad and not on your phone.
Yeah, no.
Maybe stationary, it's an outside.
I don't have anything else from Twitter. Any other?
Give the address again, HWWP.
Oh yeah, it's at HWWP Meetup on Twitter if you want to tweet a question out. But are there any live questions? Anyone have any questions for any of our panelists right now? Yeah, right here.
How well does WooCommerce integrate with third-party APIs? So, for example, I have a client who has a POS system that can spit out XML data or whatever, and they want to basically the inventory. If somebody buys something through the website, the inventory just knocks one back from their POS. How does that integrate?
yeah.
Those APIs.
Is it?
I think I was asking you this a little while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to answer it that adequately, but I'm just
Give it a shot.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. So you're asking around connecting to third-party APIs?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they don't want to just
Yeah, I know.
In this particular instance,
Reducing the inventory. I know that we haven't ever had issues with pushing information to third parties. There's been a lot of work in the last 2 iterations of WooCommerce at getting our REST API to a better place. To be honest, I wish Roy was here to kind of answer it better, because I don't know, I can't talk dev talk too much, but I do know that we have integrations now where information is being pushed back and forth. TradeGecko is our kind of go-to inventory TradeGecko and then Vico are 2 inventory management services that we connect to, and there's push and pull capabilities. So I can get you a better answer afterwards and point you to the right person to, if you have like a specific third party that you're looking to integrate into WooCommerce. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's an XML import-export
Yeah.
tool for
That's right.
QuickBooks and such. So if you're using XML, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Are you asking about like a POS system so they can scan the UPC code and then that gets taken out of the inventory?
It's a cloud-based POS system. It's a specialty into winery system, and they don't want to be able to manage their inventory in 2 places. In other words, if you get a sale through the website, they don't want to have to go back into their POS and manage the same inventory, keep the
Right.
So they sell brick and mortar and online, and they want those 2 inventory systems to be synchronized?
Pretty much.
Okay.
So that, yeah, the POS will manage the physical inventory and their online inventory.
Right.
This might not be so related, but it's pointing in another direction. There's a developer in Santa Monica who was at our meetup group who wrote a plugin for called Picking Pal.
Okay.
And he's, basically to ensure whatever somebody's picking, when you're fulfilling an order, you have a physical, a scanner to beep. And so I have a client who's looking for, exactly what you're talking about too. And I don't think there's anything in place yet, but maybe you can develop that for everybody. I think it's really needed. I don't know, Joel, if something's on the horizon, I always try to pick your brain about that. Is anybody working on a solution for
Inventory?
Yeah.
For
Inventory.
Oh, scan.
No.
No, okay.
So there's a lot of opportunity in WooCommerce to build plugins.
We have another question over here.
To continue on the theme of point of sale, how much interest does WooCommerce have about moving into a single point of sale system? I'm very interested in that from my perspective.
Yeah, so the question was how interested is WooCommerce into moving into our own point of sale system, right, or partnering with someone. I think there's some other moves that we kind of would want to focus on before we get to that, but it's clearly a huge opportunity, especially considering we're dealing with mainly micro merchants. So like the average WooCommerce merchant is pretty small. We're talking about $100,000 a year in business, like pretty small. Not to say there aren't large businesses, but and a lot of like boutique kind of businesses, and a lot of them would be selling via other channels, including brick and mortar. So or brick and mortar, or other ways of directly dealing with people. I think it's definitely something we need to do. Shopify's doubled down big time on that. They have their own service. I don't even think they've partnered with another company. I think it's, they actually get into technology as well, like selling the hardware and all that. So it's not on our immediate roadmap, but definitely something that I think down the line would be great to tackle.
So the WooCommerce point of sale partnership that you're working on right now, is that working out pretty well?
Well, right now we have, we haven't released anything, so it's always hard to say if something's working out well until we see a response from our customers. But I'm pretty excited to be working with Stripe and Lightspeed. I think they're both great companies, well established and really successful and really popular. So we have a really great product manager, Patrick Rolland, who, when looking at these kinds of things, does actual customer research and reaches out to our merchant base. And so we kind of validated who we were going to talk to, and Square and Lightspeed were the top two. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Great.
Another question. I think this kind of goes back to starting out with a store. But if you're going to start a store online, you want to get into the e-commerce space, how do you justify, or how do you say, I'm going to do WooCommerce versus I'm going to do Shopify, I'm going to do a hosted solution? What justifies WooCommerce over hosted?
I get this question a lot. And working with different size clients, I think a lot of it's driven by budget. The first question is, well, what is your budget? Or, at least establishing some pricing points. I would say for somebody who's a startup who really doesn't have a big budget, who wants to keep it really lean and do it themselves, I think Shopify is amazing. It's, when you look at the cost of it, it's including the hosting, it's support, they have phone support, I think it's 24/7, and you can't get that with WordPress. You're gonna have to pay a lot. You're gonna have to pay somebody, a developer, a company, an agency. So I think Squarespace is another big one that's moving into this market. Who knows with WordPress.com if they're gonna roll something, and that's my theory with one of the reasons they got WooCommerce is to bundle this in with WordPress.com and make it compete with Shopify. But I think it does come down to budget a lot of times, and working with WooCommerce, it does take time. There's a learning curve. It's, as much as I'd like to say it's easy and simple, a lot of my clients don't get into the details. We're here to do the heavy lifting, but after that, they're just managing orders and doing small updates, if that.
Yeah, I totally agree with Andrew around budget and just ease of getting started. I've recommended to Shopify to even like family members and people like that, just because I don't want to have to tweak their site every time they need something done. Yeah, so I think the one thing I'd like to highlight is, even though there is some people that would complain about our business model having to spend money up front to buy extensions, long term that really pays off, because even if you look at like WooCommerce subscriptions, it's $200, which is a hefty price tag. But if you were to subscribe to a SaaS service that does that with Shopify, you'd be looking at a monthly fee of whatever it is, $30, $40, $50. The other thing to take into consideration is, if you are a small merchant and you are not wanting to use Shopify's proprietary payment service, they tack on at the lowest tier 2% to every transaction. So I might be wrong on that. It may be 1%, 1 or 2%. It changes on the tier, but I mean, do the math on that. If you're doing $20,000 a month and having that extra percent or 2% taken off, that adds up pretty quick. If you did want to take a different payment service other than Shopify Payments. And overseas, that's an even bigger issue, because Shopify Payments is only available in a few countries. So the other thing I would add to this is WordPress at its very core is a publishing platform originating out of a blogging system, and I think that's still what drives a lot of WooCommerce merchants is creating content. It's like the greatest way to attract new business, like your headbands, right? Like, I mean, I've seen some amazing presentations by people at WordPress conferences just showing stats on putting content out. There's a guy named Bill Bellew, I don't know how to spell his name, but I could point him to you. He does these amazing talks on just hitting the publish button, just hit the publish button. And he gave this presentation on how, forget what type of business it was, but he kind of rewrote blog posts for different regions and just showed how the traffic piled up from people that were, because he was getting really specific on who he was trying to target, he helped the business attract a ton more users. So I think at its very core, that is something we're really passionate about at Automatic and WooCommerce. So.
I'd like to echo that. The power of content and the power of WordPress to allow you to publish so easily. So there's on one side, it's ease of getting started, lower the barrier to entry, etc. Everything's in one box. That's your sort of Shopify side. But if what you're looking for is something that you can customize further, something if you have either the time, the budget, or a family member, really good friend to help you out. But the bottom line is that if you have access to some of those resources, then the question is, how far can you take your WordPress WooCommerce site? You can do just about anything you want, right? Someone once asked me, well, can you do that? Well, it's a real question of time and money, right? That's really just the only thing standing in your way. But to add to your point, just the idea of being able to publish content really easily, and to circle back to your question, publishing content and utilizing social media to multiply the effect of that content. So you can put an article on your site, put up a blog post, and then you can tweet about that blog post, and you can put up a Facebook post about that blog post, and start utilizing multiple levels and multiple layers of marketing to essentially utilize one article, one post, and start utilizing multiple platforms to push that message and to publish that post. And there are tools that will allow you to automatically publish that post to multiple platforms when you click that publish button. So it's really powerful. I have a site. I put up a couple articles about a few of my manufacturers. I challenge you to put up one blog post even every other day or once a week. You will see a difference if you're consistent. Putting up one and then forgetting about it for a month isn't going to get you anywhere because it's cumulative, right? But being able to have the power of WordPress publishing engine behind your e-commerce site to drive traffic through content is very powerful.
And Google's algorithm is taking that into account.
It's huge. Google is counting new, fresh content very highly in their algorithm. So it's very important. Thank you for your mention.
Yeah, also, if you have an existing WordPress blog and you decide to tag on the store, it's more advised to use WooCommerce because you can have it within your URL, so whatever, yourdomain.com/shop, which is from an SEO standpoint a lot more powerful versus having shop.yoursite.com.
All right, I got two pretty good questions here.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Thank you guys for this awesome transition, talking about SEO. Google rewards performance for SEO. Obviously, we talked about CDN, but what other things can an e-commerce site do to increase their performance, therefore their SEO?
What else besides?
So in addition to external or edge caching through a CDN, the most effective way that I've seen to accelerate an e-commerce site, whether it's a WooCommerce site or even a Magento site or whatever it is caching. And then there's the question of file-based caching versus memory-based caching. So utilizing tools for basic disk or file-based caching can accelerate things really nicely. To take it a step further, if you can access memory-based caching, tools like Memcache or Redis, which are very specific tools for different purposes. Just to dig a little bit of a deeper trench really quickly, Redis is a heavier memory-based caching tool that allows for tagging and all kinds of advanced functionality. Memcache is a much lighter tool. So a lot of times when you go into one of the caching plugins for WordPress, like W3 Total Cache or one of those, you will see options for different types of caching, different segments of caching. So sessions, just as a quick note, I learned this very recently, sessions should never be cached with Redis. It's a little too heavy of an application. But the point here is caching and image optimization. Run your site through webpagetest.org. Go to webpagetest.org, run your site. They have some simple grading options at the top. If you get a less than an A in anything, fix it. And they'll be very specific. Is your host running transfer compression? Are you compressing your images? Are you running a CDN? Do you have effective use of CDN? They give you a check or an X. So it's really straightforward.
Another good resource is feedthebot.com. You can do feed the bot. Feed the bot, and it's for SEO and performance. So they have a bunch of tools where you can run your site through, and then they tell you what to change.
Was there a follow-up question in the back there? I thought.
No.
Okay.
What was the question? How to increase your performance? Yeah, besides CDN, what else? How else can you?
Local cache.
Yeah.
Front of SEO.
Yeah, for SEO.
All right, the other question I thought was pretty good. If you have the budget, why would you choose WooCommerce over Magento?
Ooh. Hey now.
I've had clients come off of Magento and go to WooCommerce. I don't think I've had too many go from WooCommerce to Magento. The complaints I've heard for Magento is I think finding developers, it's more costly maybe, the development team you have to get. There's also enterprise level where there's certain functionality in Magento where you have to bump up to an enterprise grade. I can't remember if it's 10 or 15,000 a year. Is it 18,000? 18,800. So I think
Per web node.
per web. So you have to look at what functionality you want to have, and if there's some functionality that's going to be in that enterprise level, if that's a deal breaker, I think that's the best way to look at it. But I think looking at WooCommerce, there's just so many options, so many plugins that it makes a lot of sense to go down that road and at least see what you can do with it. I think Magento is it's specialized in a different way, and I haven't done a lot of work, but speaking to clients, that's some of the experience I've had.
So I guess it depends on what you're hunting. I think about it as sort of like a game hunting sort of a situation, and you want to bring the appropriate tool for the job. WooCommerce and WordPress are much easier to optimize for performance. So if you don't want to spend a lot of time and money optimizing performance for, I mean, there are certainly differences between WooCommerce and Magento. And I mean, I've been working with both for a very long time. I've been working with Magento since 2007 when Variant first released the first version before they were Magento, and I've been working with WooCommerce for my own stores. So the thing is that WordPress and WooCommerce are much more lightweight applications. They're easier to optimize, they're easier to admin, they're easier to implement and deploy. The cost of ownership over time is going to be less. The cost of plugins and extensions is going to be less. An extension on WooCommerce that might be anywhere from, say, $65 to $200 would start at about $150 to $200 and range up for Magento. Even if you're on the community edition, the free edition of Magento, you're still paying a higher premium for the extensions to get you the plugins, to get you the functionality that you get in the enterprise, like Andrew mentioned. So it's definitely lower cost barrier to entry. Much easier to optimize and much easier to manage and learn quickly on WooCommerce.
Just one thing I wanted to add to that. Those are great answers. But on Magento Community Edition, all of the extensions that are submitted are done so by third parties. So it's not. I can't speak to their code review process, but it's not a curated or centralized marketplace. So on WooCommerce, we actually vet the code of every extension, whether it's hosted on our repositories or we're linking out. All of that code is reviewed and kept up to date, and your updates you can get from one place, and support is coming from one place. What I alluded to earlier in my presentation is that Magento, what they have done an amazing job of is building out this network of agencies and developers that have really bought into the Magento vision and have contributed to that perception that Magento is the best solution for enterprise. And I think that's a pretty big, I guess, hill that Woo will have to climb to try to compete in that space if we choose to. So, Magento ecosystem. There you go. Yeah.
One thing I found with larger stores, I don't know if you guys have found this, if you're getting into 2,000 SKUs or more, hosting especially becomes important. I've had clients on WP Engine and it wasn't keeping up, so we moved to VPS and dedicated servers. So maybe Roy wants to talk about this, just the inherent way that WordPress works with post types and WooCommerce and the strain on the database when you get thousands of plugins and a lot of data moving. Can it keep up? Can it have that speed? That's something I question, whether Magento is a better choice in this solution. I've found some of the solution is changing the hosting, and that can just kill it with really fast hosting. That seems to work, but.
So just to kind of continue with that, yeah, I've noticed, I'd say just generally with WordPress, and we talked about this before, but if you are at a point where you've optimized everything you can, and it's still slow, then you just throw more server stuff at it, and usually it'll speed it up eventually. One thing I know about Magento is that it gives you a lot of reporting, so you get a lot of analytics over your website, but every time it needs to get a piece of data for that reporting, there's an HTTP request, right? There's something that needs to happen between database, and the user on the website. There's a lot of these going on. So Aaron's actually taught me a lot about the I/O and how crowded it can get with Magento. So I know that, there's definitely an issue with the hosting, and I haven't dealt with too many WooCommerce stores that have lagged because of hosting, but I've never dealt with the 2,000 SKU. Like usually if someone says I have 2,000 SKUs, I'm like, don't talk to me. Yeah, it ends up being a pain. But I mean, WordPress in general can be. Even if you're not using WooCommerce, if you just have a lot of data and a lot of plugins, then yeah, you're going to want to optimize as much as you can and then throw a better server at it, basically, and that'll help. Do we have any more live questions?
Yeah.
Just throwing more server at something doesn't necessarily accelerate it, right? It's about making sure that you increase the resources that are required for that particular problem, right? So if the bottleneck is database, if it's a ton of posts or a ton of SKUs, you're re-indexing or whatever it is, then it's important to increase the right resource. So one of the things, and Roy mentioned I/O. I/O stands for input output, and it is literally the connection between RAM and hard drives. So when the processor requests a piece of data from the database that was requested by a user, it's transferred, the RAM basically requests it from the hard drives, which drop it into RAM, and RAM delivers it to the CPU. If the drives are not fast enough, then you're going to have a slow I/O performance. So sometimes not just increasing number of CPUs or the amount of RAM, but actually increasing the IOPS, which is the input-output per second. And that is literally the performance of your database. That is the performance of your database. So if you have a lot of SKUs or a lot of posts, making sure you have fast storage is really, really important. So I would recommend finding fast storage. Right now, the cool kids are all talking about provisioned IOPS in the self-provisioned cloud space, talking about provisioned IOPS. So you actually pay for performance. I want this level of provisioned IOPS. You don't necessarily pay for a specific RAID type or disk type, but provisioned IOPS. So making sure that you're increasing the right resource is really important. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, straight to the question in the back.
Yeah, does the subscription plugin that you were talking about earlier, does that work with consumable products as well?
With
Consumable products, subscription.
So does the subscription plugin work with consumable products
like some chocolate, for example?
Something you actually have to ship?
Yeah, so ship every 30 days or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. So yeah, you can make a monthly, you can set up how you want to subscribe to the product. I had a client with a online pharmacy, diabetics, and a lot of her products were subscription-based, so that's how she set it up for monthly delivery.
Did you have to do it? Sorry?
It's a recurring billing, so you have to partner the payment gateway to make sure it has a subscription-based payment.
Right.
So you have to look into that, and then when that person signs up, they can choose to be on a subscription, and then they can manage their subscription in their account, so they can cancel it or update their payment method. So it can definitely do it.
And you can do that per SKU too?
Per SKU, right. Yeah, you can have a regular one-time payment or a subscription-based for each product. Does it create a new order every time, like when they ship it?
Yeah, like if I'm buying this product for X amount of dollars per month, do you and your admin see a new order every month automatically?
Yeah. So every time it ships, you're going to see that new order come in.
All right, question from Twitter, and we're just going to go down the line here, have everyone answer. Top 3 tips and top 3 plugins to improve a WooCommerce website.
Oh, jeez.
We're going to think about it for a second.
Start with Joel.
One thing, only one plugin or system comes to mind for me. It's Opt-in Monster, which is a service that automatically.
Did you guys speak up and repeat that, please?
Sure, it's called Opt-in Monster. Opt-in Monster, and it notices when your customer is leaving your website. It's called exit intent technology, whatever, right? And it brings up a light box and asks the customer to do something. You can put anything you want into this light box. It's a very, very good tool to incentivize people to put your let's say subscribe to your newsletter or something like this. It works really well to increase conversions, and you can basically put anything in there. Maybe you can even connect it if somebody has something in their shopping cart that it's asking to, like, hey, if there's something in there you want to do whatever. So I think this is going to help a lot.
I feel like a broken record, but caching plugins. Caching.
Everything wrong.
That's right. And especially a caching plugin that will allow you to integrate a CDN. That would be my top tips for a WooCommerce site. And if you are, if I actually use Avalara, so if you aren't sure that you're calculating sales tax properly, like I wasn't, Avalara. It will simplify your life in sales tax greatly. I'm a fan.
Just Avalara is awesome.
Right, exactly.
talk to those guys?
This is a really tough question because I think it really depends on type of business, what size you are. But I think getting the basics right is like the foundation, right? Payments, who are you selling to? What countries are they in? If you're doing cross-border payments, there's some great solutions. To checkout, BlueSnap actually will enable you, if you have customers in other countries, to check out in their own currency. I think that's really cool. Shipping, I think Stamps.com, ShipStation, and Shipping Easy are 3 really good solutions depending on who you're shipping with. And on that note, you're going to want to get your rates set up correctly too. So we have, depending who you're shipping with, we have extensions for U.S. Postal Service, UPS, FedEx. A few kind of cool tools just off the top of my head. I think there's a company called Yotpo that's really cool that handles social reviews. There's a few different social review extensions.
What was it called?
Yotpo, it's Y-O-T-P-O, Yotpo. There's another one, yeah, so they handle social reviews. They automate the process of sending your customers an automated email. You can configure it however you want, how much time after the transaction occurs to have them send the email, and then they can review the product from the email itself, and then that gets published. It can get published if they choose so on social channels. I think that's a pretty neat tool. And then if you have a ton of SKUs, a lot of people overlook this, but there's some really neat search extensions. Instant Search Plus is one that I think is pretty good. It just, if you have 1,000 SKUs, WooCommerce indexing itself is okay, but it's nice to have it in real time. So if someone's searching, green shirt, large, whatever, it will in real time in that search bar bring you those products. I think that's pretty neat. Off the top of my head, those are a few. I mean, there's Instant Search Plus. Yeah. If you have a lot of SKUs, that becomes really valuable. Yeah, tax stuff obviously is huge. Email automation, I actually did want to mention that. Currently the most popular, so there's a few direct integrations we have for email marketing. The most popular one is actually a really simple one. It's newsletter subscription, and that just enables you to easily give your users a chance to opt in to MailChimp or Campaign Monitor. So hopefully down the line we'll build out a little bit more comprehensive integrations like the MailChimp and Campaign Monitor, because MailChimp in particular has really good functionality for e-commerce where you can really get specific about how you want to automate your emails if you want to get serious about email marketing. So.
And cart abandonment emails, there are a number of companies that can provide email automation around specific actions or inaction on your site. So you can set up triggers so that if a user is registered with your site and you have their email address and they have looked at X and Y product but not checked out, or purchased X and Y product, that you can set up a series of email messages to either incentivize them to come back and make the purchase, or to follow up with a make sense follow-up purchase or repurchase. So email automation has really helped a lot of stores that I'm familiar with to increase their repeat buyers. To really increase that.
What was that?
I had the question.
I mean, it's generally email automation. There's a lot of different companies out there that provide it.
You don't have a specific one then?
I mean, one of the companies I work with a lot is Bronto. They're one of the great email automation companies.
Is there a plugin for it?
I believe there is. Yeah, there should be a WordPress WooCommerce plugin.
Just to add, there is one plugin called Receiptful. Have you heard of that? Which one of the founders of Woo started. That's his company now. So that's follow-up emails, people who have purchased something from your store and you want to send them an incentive in the receipt. Studies show that repeat customers are your biggest customers. You might want to check that one out. Also, another cool one, if it's kind of obscure, but there's a Gravity Form plugin that works with WooCommerce. I've been able to do some really interesting checkouts with very custom leads and form-based checkouts for products. I found that to be pretty helpful.
Cool, so I think we're running out of time. Any last questions? All right.
Is there a difference for the hosting if the users, the customers were from the Middle East or India or something?
So the question is there a difference in hosting depending on where your customers are coming from?
Yeah, because like most of my customers are from the Middle East, so should I go with that hosting or what hosting should I go with?
Yeah, there's two parts to that. So one is your origin should ideally be in this region, and you should use a CDN that has locations in these regions, so that you can ensure that the performance in this geographical regions is fast. At some point, I read somewhere that Google also makes a difference where your server is located in terms of how you rank in this country. So I think it's important that your hosting is close to your users and that you take the CDN to bring the performance to users as well.
Yeah, I echo that for sure. Your best bet is to have your origin server in the geographic region that your users are. If you're not happy with the options in a specific region and you want to kind of take it out one layer of distance, one thing you could do is actually get an IP from that hosting company and ping the IP from the location your users are surfing from to see what kind of latency there is between that geolocation and the location of the host. And then adding a CDN that has nodes within that region will greatly increase the performance and the conversion rate ultimately.
All right, I got one last question, and Joel, you don't have to answer this, but how long have you been at Automatic?
2 months.
Or sorry,
a little more than 2 years.
All right, so the question is, Automatic unveiled an awesome paid sabbatical time. Are you grandfathered into that? Because I know you have to be there like 5 years, I think, before you're capable.
2 years, Ken. 2 years.
Starting at 0.
I do not know. I should know this. There's a number of other things that we, a few areas where we weren't grandfathered into. I would guess, I'm pretty certain that we are not. I think we start from kind of day one as an Automatic employee.
He gets all the free WordPress downloads he wants. So.
Yeah.
All the free swag.
Get a lot of other cool stuff, a lot of other perks and stuff, so yeah. I should know the answer.
You got an Automatic sweatshirt.
That would have been the first thing I asked.
Yeah. First thing I asked.
Can I get a sweatshirt? Do I get sabbatical?
Where's my sabbatical?
Alright, cool. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to find any of the panelists afterwards, and yeah, thanks for coming out. Greg, you want to close us up?
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I'd like to thank all of our panelists and speaker, Joel, once again. Just so you know, next month, we're going to be doing something kind of cool and a little different. Brandy Nanofsky, who's sitting right over here, he was the one that provided WP Radius, the food this evening. He and I are going to do something kind of cool where it's still getting formed, but the idea is if you're a freelancer and you're designing and developing websites for your clients, sometimes you just need a place where you can vent a little bit. Sometimes you need a place where it's like a support network. Next month at this meetup, it's going to be a freelancer support night. And there's going to be 2 caveats we want you to keep in mind. One is, it's not going to be a client bashing night, okay? So keep that in mind. Number 2 is, you can't be too down on yourself night. So the self-hating, you got to be careful about it, okay? So the idea is, come with your thoughts and ideas next month about challenges you've had in your business. But, you know, 1, don't hate on yourself too much, and don't hate on your clients too much. So next month, we'll see you guys back here at Hollywood WordPress, and have a great month.